So we need to talk about Lexiters. What, may you ask, is a Lexiter? Well, a Lexiter is someone who is on the left, but it was also for Brexit. Hence, sort of the shortening to the left Brexiteer, which was the long term. Now, here's the thing. During 2016, most of the noise of Brexit and stuff that was put forward, or at least the big groups making the argument for Brexit, were on the right. And a lot of these left Brexiteers didn't really get involved because they actually saw the right making this case and realized, is this a good idea or not? And there was a bit of a break in this movement of actually people saying, well, hold on for a second. Should we be really advocating for this? Bear in mind how hard the right were pushing for it. And remember, this includes figures like Mick Lynch. Now, Mick Lynch is doing a fantastic job at the moment. But, and this is a big but, Mick Lynch's views on Brexit and Ukraine, and of course, we're talking about sort of preserving workers' rights, haven't exactly really worked out. They haven't really worked out at all, because the Lexiter cry, especially from the unions that were pro-Brexit, was the whole idea that if we do Brexit, we can protect workers' rights far better than we can in the EU. You've only got to look at the recent EU law bill that's gone through Parliament, and it's passing through its first stage currently. If that goes through, that has the potential to destroy a ton of workers' rights and workers' protection that we have taken for granted for so long. And yet now, only are they concerned about protecting workers' rights. Again, I made that little, I saw that little post a few weeks ago on my channel. If you look at the posts, that was from the TUC, a group that in 2016 was advocating for Brexit to protect workers' rights. And yet here they are now saying, oh no, we need to, protect workers' rights. The Tories would not be able to pass this bill and potentially destroy so many workers' rights if we were in the EU. That is a fact. That is a cold, hard fact. And there is, I think at the moment, certainly a movement in the Lexiteers to actually start to distance themselves, not only as Brexiteers, but we were never Brexiteers to begin with at all. So today we're going over to Workers' Liberty. This is a blog that promotes, or at least wants, a socialist revolution to happen here in the UK. So they're not exactly for Keir Starmer, but they're not against him either, but they certainly are not friends of him either, but they do certainly want to push Labour to be more socialist, just to know where this sort of blog is coming from. But remember, going into this, these were people who were Lexiters, and their promise was, if you vote for Brexit, we can protect workers' rights far better than we can in the EU. And guys, how's that working out for you right now? It's not working out very well at all. So before we go diving into this article, please do remember to hit the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can well buy me coffee. And as always, guys, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button and the Pony Club down below as well. So on with this. Again, this comes from the blog Workers' Liberty. The title of Break Labour from the Brexit Cult. And I would actually argue that there is not a strong, or at least we haven't seen a very strong Brexit cult like we see in the Conservatives. That's very clear. There isn't that faction. Maybe there is, but they don't sort of seem to make themselves that, shall we say, well known. But anyway, let's go on to this. So, Keir Starmer has now at least criticised the Brexit purity cult of the Tory right. Starmer was speaking about Brexit-related impasse in Northern Ireland, but he still wants to squash discussion within Labour of Brexit, or even significantly modifying the Tories' version of it. I think he has talked about making Brexit work, and this certainly means that you saw the very thin, paper-thin deal that Boris Johnson did. Starmer's talking about filling that out, and that includes doing deals in whole ranges of sectors and areas, and that will include a lot of rights that we are about to lose. Some of these regulations involve, again, workers' safety, workers' rights, property, intellectual property rights, digital rights, and sort of storage, and how that works around GDPR as well. This covers a ton of stuff. And these are going to be, shall we say, very, very much put back in, because the second some of these regulations go down, even more, the barriers come, and stopping even more trade between the UK and the EU, because, of course, we're not following these regulations. It makes it harder, and it makes these companies have to prove even more that they are following these regulations. But back to it. So London's Mayor Sadiq Khan has pushed for the other way by calling for a, quote, pragmatic debate about the benefits of rejoining the customs union and the single market. He made the call at the posh Mansion House dinner, not in a Labour movement meeting, and was motivated as such by concern for London-based capitalist interests for the liberal internationalist principles. Again, you can tell where this blog is sort of coming from. Like I say, they do advocate and want, a socialist revolution. Just, guys. But his conclusion is right. Mitigating the economic and social barriers of Brexit and restoring free movement of people between the UK and Europe will directly benefit millions, creating better conditions in the fight for working class and human rights. In October, the government's Office for Budget Responsibility estimated that Brexit would reduce the UK's GDP by 4%, twice as much as COVID-19. And the Centre for European Reform think tank calculated that in early 2022, GDP was over 5% lower than if Brexit had not happened. Investment is almost 14% lower, and good trades is 14%. No wonder support for rejoining the EU has moved from constantly behind support for staying out to a 10 to 15 points ahead. So, yeah, as we said, even these other movements, who basically some of them were quite pro Brexit, because one of the big legislative talking points is that the European Union is basically a massive capitalist trap. But the thing is, who is the biggest voting bloc in the EU Parliament? There is a massive pro-socialist group, a group that is primarily responsible for pushing so much of the workers' rights and worker protections that we have seen come from the EU. So much for it for being this big capitalist trap. And while no political party and barely any MP, no trade union has advocated reversing Brexit or even rejoining the single market and customs union. But I think certainly rejoining the single market and customs union, I think that will change. That will absolutely change. Because you just go back to 2016 and you just go, well, look, the Leave campaign advocated for remaining in the single market and customs union. The only reason we left it was because the Tories sort of demanded it, that, this hard right group of Tories essentially demanded it, saying it was the will of the people. But if you go back to 2016, you can see the Leave campaign, you can see it in their literature that they were advocating for staying in the single market customs union. They were not talking about leaving it. Remember Daniel Hanan's famous quote, only a fool would leave the single market and customs union. So, the internationalist socialist left should shake off its weariness and confidently speak the truth. We should advocate reversing Brexit. Unfortunately, as I said before, there are many on the socialist left who advocated for Brexit. And to be honest, the way in which they advocate it, especially now with the EU reform, the EU regulations bill, all the strikes at the moment, yeah, they're not, shall we say, looking in the best light. So I am at least glad there is this change happening to say, okay, guys, we need to be pro-European and we need to sort of take that standpoint. There is no argument for not reversing Brexit and at least even rejoining the single market and customs union. As the left, you need to start making that argument. And I'm glad that they are making that movement. But anyway, we'll continue. We should challenge the entire Labour movement and everyone in the Labour Party. How can rejoining the single market with free movement and customs union as a first step not be a good demand? Exactly. That is really the question. That would be fantastic. And the movement needs to happen now. Certainly, at the next Labour conference, put that forward. Let's start this as a motion. We've seen this happen with the PR. Get Labour to put on its agenda rejoining the single market and customs union as a policy proposal. Let's start pushing that forward. Let's start doing that, because the PR campaign has certainly led the way and shown that, yes, you can do that. So that is something that needs to happen. And it is a pattern you can follow as well. So back to it. So, and with urgency. For now, most EU regulations still hold in Britain. The government has postponed customs checks on EU imports to 2024. If we leave the issue until the Tories have done their bonfire of EU regulations, then putting down the barriers again and resolving the Northern Ireland Protocol impasse will become a bigger task. Exactly right. This is what we have, not only just the left, but everyone who is, sensibly talking about Brexit has said for a while. This bonfire of EU regulations is going to cause huge problems. It's going to make the Northern Ireland Protocol task even harder to actually try and solve. We should advocate, they continue, that the Labour policy on Brexit is made by the party's membership through its democratic process, not by the political clique around Starmer. And without a stand for migrants' rights and strong international solidarity, workers here cannot triumph. Failing to expose the conditions of the Tories' Brexit policy means sacrificing workers' interests and struggle on the altar of nationalism. So, to be honest, good. Because I have said this. There are, unfortunately, a lot of people on the left who today, going back to 2016, look like absolute fools for advocating what they were advocating at the time with Brexit. And this fed in to be honest, very much this belief that we would leave the EU and that this would allow Corbyn to come in and create this socialist utopia. And of course, they argued that, the Tories were going to lose. It was going to be absolute shambles. We'll go forward. We'll win. And it'll be amazing. We'll have, you will have, Corbyn come in and he'll make everything wonderful and great. Of course, that's not what happened. But that is the wacky doodle world that they, unfortunately lived in. And, just as we criticize the right-wing Brexiteers for living in, and promoting this fancy land of Brexit that they promoted, we do not very often on this channel take to task those people on the left who also promoted their own version of a fancy land that they promoted. So it is good. It is good to see that even, Workers' Liberty, who, again, agitates for a socialist revolution, is saying, hey, look, rejoining the single market and customs union is a fantastic move. It is a good step forward. And then even going on to join the EU is something that we need to see. It's something the left needs to get behind on. So hopefully this is where all the left needs to come together and go, right, we need to start stating in our core principles as UK lefties that we are pro-European. That is the stance that we have to take, and we have to start openly having these conversations about, rejoining the European Union, reversing Brexit, rejoining the single market and customs union, making sure that this bonfire of EU regulations is reversed in itself, because that bill, I've talked just about how disastrously that bill is going to affect so many businesses up and down the UK. It is going to be it is going to be bad. It is going to be really bad. There is going to be so many, I think, potentially unforeseen consequences. But of course, this comes primarily because, unfortunately, the UK public do not really care about regulations. And they should do. But unfortunately, as we've said before, these regulations sometimes are very highly technical. And if you've ever worked in anything that's highly technical, and someone's gone, oh, what do you work in? Oh, that sounds, interesting. And, as you've sort of explained to them, you've seen the glaze just come over them. So, oh God, why did I ask this question? I have no idea what he's talking about. Oh, help me, someone, please, come into this conversation and help end this for me. It's the exact same thing that happens when you talk to the UK, public about regulations, unfortunately. And if this bill does go through, if this does pass and does become law, then I think a lot of people in the UK are going to start waking up to the actual importance of regulations, and at least regulatory bodies, how they work, and more information about regulations themselves. Because I'll tell you now, the Tories are not prepared for the amount of disastrous PR stories that are going to come their way because they got rid of so much of these regulations. So, as always, guys, like I say, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a motivation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, as always, guys, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.